cricket sabotage on the microphone switch, I can tell. Could you tell? We'll have that fixed up later. Yeah, crickets. They're not liking what we do. Points them out. There's people doing stuff, and then there's the pretenders that talk about it, or the excusers. Again, proper action, folks. Not just being busy, but proper. And in a lot of that, when you get involved with some of this, you'll find out even proper action, because of the universal criminality we're up against, will look like it's not effective. And you just have to get over that part and keep pressing, and have a spirit in you that won't stop, because it's about a bigger deal. It's really about a way bigger deal. And so I'm going to need maybe a mic check if you can. Maybe in the RLM chat, I'll look over there quickly. Is the audio going in well enough? It doesn't look like it's quite right. Any rate, I'll let that hang for a moment. But so really, the crickets means no action or improper action. And I don't know, really. I get to thinking about that as I think about I'm saying stuff, and people don't like hearing that, I suppose. They want to think that we have other things to do, and that's not the case. This is a real issue that we're up against. We've been living a big, major illusion, and until we come to terms with that, and we in turn upon that, decide one way or the other, we agree with it. We can talk and chat and do all the kinds of things and just agree with it because we're not turning our attention to it. Or we turn our attention to it. And so I guess that's the bottom line. I try to bring this stuff every week. We got lots more going on. As soon as we get a better response than the silence by the system for what we do, I'll be bringing it in and showing it. So I can just tell you, thank you very much, chat room, RLM chat, for that. I can just tell you that you have to understand the dynamic of the organization that we're up against. And you have to look through what appears to be initial failures, and you still have to persist. And they've got these people that are occupying your life have a ton of tricks. There's so many tricks. So when I tell you there's a right way to go about it, it's trying to keep you safe when you're doing it. And like I said, you make your record going in that's better than no record at all to show the problem. But this is an ongoing. You'll find that the judicial system is really one of the safety valves that gets you believe that there's justice and they can deliver it. In fact, it's nothing like that. And so you think going in through the courts is really some kind of a remedy, and I told you that we learned that a long time ago that it wasn't, and so I worked and figured out how to essentially cut it out and still have a court. Remember, your complaint, the complaint you do in the remedy invokes the jurisdiction, not the judge, not the clerk, not the defendant, and so you have that much, and then you just follow the rules that are provided. In order to kind of move this thing along by the rules. You're going to get a lot of resistance, or actually non-response, or worse, they just deny you the due process that's required, even the simplest due process. And that seems to be the worst of it, that you have to really pay attention to, because that's where it's kind of like they get their last little bit on you, because they can stick you through, in this last case that we're kind of working through really importantly is, I've been able to now set the record to show what's going on in the courts is money laundering, and it's really wash, rinse, and repeat. They get you into a certain cycle, or if they can get you into that cycle, you get wash, rinse, repeat, and they're continually laundering money. And the way that works is that they take the money illegally underneath the color of an authority that they're doing something else, and then another judge or a second judge or even the same judge comes in the subsequent and takes it back away, and they put it through the system like it's legitimately taken. And so here you've got to, I guess, again, not being in the system, if you haven't never tried to fight a traffic ticket, this is why I say traffic tickets are fun, because in a way you're going to get those things anyway. You might as well get experience on how to address it, how to address that system that won't accept the rules as they're written either. You got to see all this. Those of you that don't want to see it, I don't know what to say. Those of you that think you can get away with not doing it, you'll just pay your fines and fees or pay your taxes and we'll get along. That's the other problem. Well, you got a ring in your nose, And you can talk about how free you are and how all this stuff is, and you can kind of be on thinking you're on the right side of the problem, but in fact you're not. And I don't like talking to that way because it seems a lot of people get offended about what that truth actually is. Because the bottom line is, it doesn't really matter what I'm saying, whether how you're offended. The bottom line is, if it becomes an excuse against what oppresses you, you're oppressed. No matter what you call it, no matter how you think it got there, no matter how it seems to be, how you complain about the wrong, that stuff sits there. And so it's really come down, at least for me, you just have to be what they call that squeaky wheel in the minimum. If you're not being a squeaky wheel and resisting lubrication, you're not going to really be doing much in order at least to warn the others. And that's why I call it we're all like a prairie dogs and the eagle's on us. I mean, sometimes one guy will look up and see the shadow of the eagle and all the prairie dogs get to run in the hole, so that day we're all saved. But one day maybe Alice is missing. We don't know why. It's because none of us were really paying attention. Oh, maybe a couple people saw it, but not in mass. And so that's where we are, the mass. And I'm not talking church. Anyway, so I'm just thinking about, I started thinking about these things and just don't understand why more people aren't stepping up incorrectly, as I told you last week, showing you right in our face, this whole Bundy thing, this whole Harney County thing, the Portland thing, the courts, right in our face. They're not bashful to stick their crime in our face, and they're getting away with it. So before we get on to that, a really important thing came on for your web. Some of you have gone and moved over into Linux, and I would think that you need to. For those of you that don't have systems that need Windows, you might really consider this. But we have a warning, just came out, just breaking now. Got this off the RLM Twitter feed, and it says, warning, Linux Mint website hacked, and the ISOs have been replaced by a backdoor operating system. So those of you that are updating into Linux, or changing over operating systems, or just looking at downloading the file right now at Linux Mint website, make sure that you have to go through they're probably going to fix this, but the fact is that make sure you got your hashtag. This is where you want to go through and figure out how to do hashtag tag checks, and make sure that you're doing the right downloads regarding all these things. Because, again, we're vulnerable to these digital world that we can't do ourselves. It used to be really, really simple. You used to be able to do basic little things and program your own stuff, and you can know what was in it, what was around it. There wasn't too many chips involved and how they worked. And boy, that day's gone way long way. So we are vulnerable to these people, good, bad, or indifferent, to this technology. And so I just want to give you the warning. Even though Linux was touted as, and it's really a small percentage of the market of OS users, operating system users for computers, but it's still vulnerable. And it used to have this statement that it was kind of invulnerable to hackers because there was really not much going on, but because of this XP thing and all that, and then Windows 10, people are flocking away and going into alternative operating systems, and so now it becomes more attractive. I don't know why. Well, I know why. I mean, if you're on the black side of everything, then you're going to be wanting to hack everybody because you're just a criminal at heart. So I'm getting a report from Grimner that they've already fixed that. So those who downloaded it yesterday, folks, Linux Mint website, those yesterday, I would just say dump your operating system and start over. Go today, I guess. I would double check the hashtag anyway, and go to the Linux Mint site. Linux Mint is a pretty good distribution. It's very easy to use. A lot of people like it. It's very functional. It really works well, consistent. If you were in Windows, you can move over into Linux Mint, and so it's one of the top few that I would think you should be able to find that you'll choose. There's just hundreds to choose from. I opted not to choose that because on my systems it didn't quite work on all the system I had. So that's the only reason why I was looking at selecting that. So it's a fairly good, really good operating system. Lots of people use it and they're happy with that. So not I don't want to diminish that, but again, I guess for me we are in a digital world. Remember big data, silent weapons for quiet wars, and if we're going to use this technology, we have to become a little bit more savvy to it. And I understand. I mean, I'm so beyond this stuff at some level. It's just a nuisance. So, just a word to the wise. Moving on. And last week we were talking about exalting the bar. Was going to use this Harney County thing to exalt the bar system, to cover up the fact that the courts, I would have to say all the courts at this point, because we couldn't get to we know where the Article 3 courts are. Well, at least by what they, at least by the statutes we know where they are. But when you go there, they don't exist. And then we found out where an Article 3 court is with nationwide jurisdiction. So there's been a cover-up over the judiciary. And that's not to say if you find an Article 3 court, and please don't, boy, this is the other thing. So much I say I can see when I'm listening later or watching people respond to me. Don't believe that because you have an Article 3 court, there's justice. Let me just put it that way. That's just the front line that you get to argue that they can't give you in the first instance. Article 3 courts don't have any other body in them than another bar member. So remember that. But this is the staged battle that we're in, that we take the victories where we can get them as we're proceeding along to expose the greater harm, the greater obstruction. But so last week I pointed out that I had predicted that they were going to rise up the attorneys, and they were going to exalt that system. And sure enough, it wasn't like I said, that night, 2 weeks ago, the nobility of the attorneys and how with bad clients. Folks, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. How in the heck can you be a bad client? That's also a reflection on that system, not providing enough information if there is a bad or good client to be the good client. There's a whole lot to talk about in this that I just can't reach. Well, maybe that's my choice to do so. We would talk about so little, though, that I want right now until I see more interest on any particular thing. I'm just going to hit broad spectrum as I work out other things to try and get us maybe different information. But I told you that they were going to exalt the system. They were going to hide right in front of you. They were going to hide the fact that they're criminals. It's right. It's happening right now, right in front of us. And yet not only are they incompetent, and we may have competency problems. That's mental health problems, because we heard that on the report. But here was not even just a day or two later, and I think this came from another listener and through a chat room somewhere, Twitter. I'm behind a Woodshed on Twitter if you wanted to kind of listen in on that. But another article comes right up after that. Remember I told you that the attorneys, they want to show you that article that says that they're changing their attitude about whether or not alcohol and mental illness was in the bar association, and they said, yeah, they're going to change that and say, yes, it's affecting the young. And I said, well, do you think that alcoholism, drug abuse and mental health issues end because they become old attorney members of the bar? Well, absolutely not. Here comes within a day, New York judge arrested for DUI on the way to court. What do I need to read more? I'll read a little bit. I guess I've got to give context to a story. We have previously dealt with the issues of judges arrested for DUIs and how to address such cases, and they're continuing on the court. They got a bunch of links. When you get this link in the blogcast, there are tons of links if you just want to see it. Again, proof, folks. As I told you, just bring your bag of proof, and you can apply this to every place you go, and just use this as one more thing on the heap of the carcass of the Bar Association that we just haven't either put on the pyre and fully let smoke to heaven, or actually shoved it off the continent, off where it belongs, off into the ocean, and let them swim with the fishes, folks. But here's an article. You'll get an article with all kinds of links to go watch these DUIs, these judges, to prove what I was telling you. The Bar Association will focus you on, the young attorneys are having trouble, and we're supposed to believe that it doesn't sit in the old attorneys, which are the judges. So here it is. Another of such case has arisen with the arrest of in New York of Judge Leticia Estacio. While it was a Saturday morning, police say the Estacio was on her way to work when she had an accident with another car on Interstate 490. She refused to take a breathalyzer and was arrested for DUI. That was a clue. Refused to take the breathalyzer. She did. I guarantee that's one of the ways to do it. Don't convict yourself by your own actions, especially without an attorney. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you can you say can and will be used against you. So it's even your actions get used against you. Your deeds are stronger than your words, and all that nonsense they tell us. They give us the warnings, and nobody listens. Kind of like a lot of people don't listen behind the woodshed. They got to keep being brought back behind the woodshed. If you don't learn your lesson behind the woodshed, you're going to get out in the real world, and someone's going to come take you out. I guess that's the problem. One of the other aspects about the broadcast name. Trying to, again, as I say, bring in the principles we really weren't told. We really have to pay attention to this. All this stuff is telling us we need to do this better, and we can do it better. So she was on her way to work as a judge on a Saturday, and she's a former district attorney who prosecuted drunk driving cases. So here we have again, see the nested corruption inside the crime, the organized criminals. These people need to be taken down. They need to be pushed off. It's like the miners used to do. They'd outlaw attorneys in their mining camps because they knew what was happening. And you see now the wound that's developed over this private trade organization bringing their private law into your way of life, which was supposed to be a Republican form of representative government. As I define that in the simplest terms would be that where government actually does protect life, limb, and property, like the Declaration of Independence says. But remember, it was a republic if we could keep it, and it doesn't look like we did. It doesn't even look like it started that way. And until we come to terms with that and can intelligently articulate it to ourselves so that we can know it inside without a doubt, and without all this nonsense I hear about everyone can tell you all kinds of stuff, a lot of it's irrelevant anyway. But the points are, like I say, you hear these constitutional attorneys talking about Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and they all miss the word ceded. I don't know why everyone's missing the word ceded. Why is that important? Because all your enabling acts and emissions acts in the Western United States say the land was ceded back to the federal government for what? Soil disposal. Yeah. So the word's there, and all these attorneys want to tell you they know better than you, and yet Ken Ivory, one of those constitutional attorneys talking about land disposal, soil disposal, says that we attorneys don't know land disposal law. He said that in a couple of it. In fact, he amplified that in a subsequent discussion with another miner of ours. So you got to shed this thing that there's an authority outside of you, and that there's actual law outside of you, and be lawful when you're doing this. Be righteous in your action in the world, in your example, and then you have to stand against the unrighteous, if I can say it that way, without causing a bunch of people to skirmish and squirm and get all weirded out about the word righteous. So, judges are attorneys too, they're bar members, it's all about a lot. Bottom line, they can say, here's the secret, they'll tell you, well, we're not an active member. It doesn't matter, they're a non-active member. They're still a member, all right? They're a member. A member of what? Of an association, of a trade union. No different than AFL-CIO. You want the AFL-CIO running your law? Well, you've allowed it in the bar. So just got to see, folks. To me, we're not even in it. We're so far beyond question. You don't ever hear from me too much talking about the District of the Federal Court, 1871 Act of 1871, and the 14th Amendment, non-citizen, and you don't hear me talk about any of that. Yes, I know a lot about all that stuff. But you'll hear, it's irrelevant, folks. I don't have to say it no more. It's irrelevant. You either understand you're living in an open-air prison and how to start dealing with the wardens and the guards who look like they're all official, which are really military. You see all the evidence that we're in a military occupation is everywhere. Do I prove that absolutely? I don't have to, folks. It's just good enough. Do I then call it out? Well, no, you don't walk up to the Nazi SS officer and say, hey, you're a Nazi SS officer, and get out of my face. That's not going to take much. No, this is a whole lot more subtle. And then they threw on more and different, multi-dimensional attack, folks. How many years have I been saying this? I'm feeling a little frustrated when I get to this point, but no, just understand that I'm earnest at telling you, and I'm not earnest, but yes, well, all these names and words are the same. I want you to know. That's all that I want. I just want you to know. And I want you to think about doing something about it. You have to think about that. You can't just turn your head on this one. And I say, well, you could. That's the problem with our language is so inefficient. It has to have been worked out that they dumbed us all down this way. Anyway, in earnest, not being earnest, and not easily, Vince. Yes, there it is. Shout out. Thank you for your help, Vince Easley. It's not easily to do what we're doing, but it's what we have to do. And so, proof. The judges are alcoholics, drug addicted, incompetency. They have competency problems, mental problems. So this is more proof, folks. I don't know what to tell you. When you're dealing with these people, it's organized criminals, and they're mentally defective as well, and they are probably underneath some alcohol. Some they're under the influence, and then they got their psychopathy or their sociopathy that you're dealing with as well. So understand, this is the battlefield. These people are well positioned. Their emplacements are well positioned and well known, and you're going to have to go in and deal with that. And you don't just stand up there and yell and scream about the Constitution, folks. We're so far beyond that, it's not even funny. It's not funny. I'm watching people go down every day spouting this Freeman stuff, sovereign citizen nonsense. It's irrelevant. They're so far ahead of you on this inside the system. We get the message about they got the message a decade ago, and people never look to change their tune. It's what I started to see really quickly, and I'm feeling so fortunate to be able to have those eyes at that time to see it. And don't go down the path of the masses. Not that you have to find always look for an unwalked path or the thing that's like always different, but you're looking for the better path. Again, Gary L. had the program Road Less Traveled. It's that road less traveled because the masses are traveling down with the lemmings. The lemmings lead, the hyperbolic determinism of the lemming leap is your reward for that. But the road less traveled is probably the one you're looking for. Whatever road that is, you're just not looking for different. You're looking for effective. You're looking to get to your destination. So one of the destinations that we have to, the realizations we have to, before, as we're moving to our destination, is to understand these bar system is a bunch of inferior, decrepit people who have exalted themselves, and you're going to have to figure out ways to challenge all that. So there's tools. Whether the criminal, listen, I've been talking to them as a criminal. If they're if they have a competency problem, a mental health problem, do you think they're going to listen to you anyway? So it doesn't matter how we look at this. There's a disability in them, and they've made themselves independent of everything, even the law, as it seems. And they collude with each other, and why not? So you have to really get this in your mind. It's why, a lot of people go to court and lose, but, they don't make a record either. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose, actually, if you keep pushing away. What you're looking right now, because especially with the internet, is making that record that shows just how corrupt they are. They can't even give you the most basic due process, folks. That should be an easy thing to tell people. You look in your statutes, you got a set aside you can do an original complaint. They don't listen to that. It says it right in the black and white. Well, if they're not going to give you that, then what are they going to give you? You have to make your record, and you have to keep persisting to keep exposing that. And there's lots. I don't want to get lost in all the things you get to do, but you get to do them. I mean, there's professions complaints. There's going down to other people, getting it on the county. You see that these courts are usually for the county, but they're a state court for the county. The county commissioners are kind of tied into that, you see? And so you go down, and when you finally get your record, you go down, and you only give you like 2 to 3 minutes to speak in most places. You give them a 2 or 3 minute bombshell. You put everybody on notice of what's going on. Now, in a good place, you're going to have a lot of PEG access, which means you got TV rolling, and people may or may not be watching. You get a couple people together, and you start pumping up your PEG access, and then people can come and get the copy of what you got people going in making powerful statements to the record, to the people, and the people start to see how these subtleties of how everyone's being plundered, how they're being harmed and run down, tortured, utilized as fodder, how they are the cattle. You don't even talk about this stuff. You just show the points of departure from the law, and then you show that nobody will do anything about it. And then you say, well, that leaves it to the folks. The countryside has to step up. So these judges you can't know what you're walking in front of, can you? I told you that last week. You can't know. Why would you allow yourself into a system that these people can be now shown by their own documentation to impose sustainable development, which is sustainable debt in its ultimate sense, by all kinds of means? How these people are admitted by their own paperwork to be under the influence of something, whether it's drugs or mental incapacity, or even their psychopathy, their mental wiring. And the stuff rises to the top, and their rules allow these people to rise to the top underneath this facade of ethics. I went through and I was looking, because it's part of what we're having to do now. I went back through and looked at the canons for the judges and the supposed ethics model rules for ethics activity for their attorneys. They violate just about everything, and they don't care. And there's no accountability except for what we can push. So, kind of off of every time I got a lot of information to go and I move over, because there's so much to say on any one point that it keeps falling down to the one thing it's in our hands to do. And we're coming to the point when it's going to get, I told you before, for most of us in this nation, the United States of America, and I think in other places as well, in maybe different ways to get at it, we all have the obligation and duty to arrest crime. That didn't stop at the evil light who are in the offices of government. In fact, when you look at the documentation, when you look at how it all comes down and what they're obligated to, as I've said quite a few times over the years, after seeing what the true obligation and duties are of a public servant, I don't know that I'd want to be one, actually. It's pretty interesting what the true obligations and duties are. Now, being somebody that I think could uphold those, I could probably do it. I'm just saying as a choice without any other knowledge than what I see as the obligations and duties, and how fine the line is actually in law over a violation that a public servant can do, and everything else that gets thrown upon you. It's pretty ominous, actually, and I can actually appreciate someone who takes on that task as a public servant in law, not the way they've got it, not as an organized crime syndicate. It is a high honor to do that and do it well. And there are some people doing it. Understand, I don't really talk in absolutes. Unless I'm talking about the bar, it seems like that's pretty absolute. You're a member or you're not. Doesn't matter if you're not active. It also doesn't matter if you have a different opinion. You're going to go with their society. And so you have to go and push your issue to the bitter end, and you have to be willing to do that. And we have a lot of work to do, and that's why it looks overwhelming and why a lot of people don't want to try and do it. And that's why I say just find even the smallest wrong you need to make right, even if it's in a traffic ticket, and learn how this system is beating you down, and learn how to get back in their face. And so the system has, as I was saying, the system has a bunch of tricks. And there's a lot of people that are planning and scheming and scamming in the government to do whatever they think they're doing to get you. And they think that they're doing the good thing. And so I want to jump back over to the Harney County thing and what happened there in Clive and Bundy and how Clive and Bundy went up to Portland and they arrested him there. At that point, I realized, I said, well, that was, whether or not that was a plan or just serendipity for the FBI to pick him up. They then held him, and they were going to charge him for some of that action back down in 2014. But I looked at that and I said, well, if they have him and they have his sons, they certainly have that Nevada ranch probably under control. And I was surprised actually. We haven't heard yet that they're actually moving on the ranch and taking the cattle off, because there's really nobody there to protect it now. And so this was truly a tactical blunder on all of this. As I was, again, I don't have a problem with what they did at Harney if they would have set the record up, but to have every family member now put in jail and now underneath the control of the federal government, who are criminals themselves, and under an agenda we can identify which is criminal, it's treasonous, it's beyond that, it's just I don't know how high this evil is, it's just evil what's happening. And we can identify it, we can show the method, all that. That Cliven Bundy and 4 others now face indictments in Nevada. There was a 51-page indictment that was written, and this guy Pete Santilli, also the press so-called, he's also on this new one. And so for everybody that was saying, and it could still be that he's not, everyone was saying that he's an FBI agent, maybe they're going to eat one of their own if that's the case, because this guy's not getting away for being at least ostensibly a press. And so the call's going out by everyone not everybody, but a lot of people in the press that they're attacking the First Amendment. Well, it's beyond, forget your Constitution. You're dealing with criminals. No one's attacking these things. He was in Cliven Bundy, and now a 51-page indictment, 16 felonies, 1 count of conspiring to commit an offense against the United States, 1 count of conspiring to impede and injure a federal officer, 4 counts of carrying a firearm in a crime of violence, 2 counts of assault on a federal officer, 2 counts of threatening a federal law enforcement officer, 3 counts of obstructing justice, 2 counts of interfering with interstate commerce by extortion, and 1 count of interstate travel in aid of extortion. Those are all commerce crimes. Why they use the term firearm and not handgun. So they're using a tax code definition. I think it's 26 USC 861 maybe. And then there's another definition that expands and names all these types of firearms that they could be, but the 861 says this is a tax firearm. It's a taxable unit. It's not your private property. So all these things are being put on these people. I think I got the indictments available for you to read. It reads a lot different, it seems, not a lot different in that it gives them more power. It reads different, certainly, than the first indictment, which I found no causation, no facts. I didn't really have time to pour through 51 pages. I didn't see a ton of actual information that would allow for me to identify the causation. The point is that the federal government now dumped on these guys another indictment in another place. I said, so that's why are they moving everybody to Portland? And why did they hold them? Was because this indictment was coming. And I'm going to suggest to you that this shows you that the judges knew, otherwise those people should have been released. The judges knew and were complicit with this organized criminal syndicate inside their system called criminal justice. Just us is what it is. And they were holding them not for good reasons, for fabricated reasons, to be able to have the FBI make this indictment so they could hold them even harder, longer, in more places now. And now they've got them locked down. They can't go defend the ranch, so to speak. The ranch is indefensible now, for the most part. And so this was laid out pretty good, even serendipitously for the government. It worked out pretty good. And now they have these people locked down, and their lives will be, they're in the rendering machine now. And everyone believes that the indictment before a United States District Court, United States District Court, USDC Court, Title I, Title IV Court is Article 3, and it's not. It's an other than Article 3 court, whatever the court is. And yet the indictment goes there, and these attorneys, the nobility of the attorneys don't call that out. This is a setup for a takedown. I saw it. That's what my problem was the whole time. Not what they're doing. It's how they're going about it seems. So it's a frustration at one level, and it's kind of feels, impotent. No, I'm not important. Impotent. I feel impotent to actually get this information out to more people. Well, I was talking last week, and we're still discussing it, trying to get a nucleus of people that know what need to be done to go out and look for more people that are in the younger set that are going to have to bring this message forward, how to do things better in the future. And I did thank you for a couple of emails that I received and wanting to help. I haven't really been able to get back to you, so I guess I have to tell you that here. I did get to some of you from last week that I didn't get to you. Actually, the more important ones that I had to actually work out help for are the pending issues that had to be dealt with were the first ones to get dealt with, and the other comments, just to comment back to you, I had to drop a couple of those, so don't be offended I didn't yet respond. That'll be coming as well. But so this is, to me, I can see pretty clearly myself. I see this pretty clearly. what they're after. It's the plan to advance the agenda. The attorneys are doing it. The bar members are the judges. In fact, I could not find. In fact, I noticed this was important, a distinction here. The first indictment for Harney County was written by an FBI agent who was an attorney, and they let that go through on her affidavit. The second one was investigated by a special agent, but did not come through on her testimony. It came through as a grand jury indictment. And this is a whole other violation that goes on against people. So, a lot to watch out for, a lot to know. This is how they do it. For me, this was all, watch the dynamic of these ranchers. I want to point out something here. I did mention sustainable development. I'm going to go back. These people cannot recognize property. What's being lost in all of this, and I don't want to get too deep, but yesterday I come in and heard a couple of conversations going on over the RLM on a different program. Absolutely, well, I just couldn't listen to it no more. There's some people that I didn't know, and there's some people that I thought didn't know that I thought were plants and shills and or promoters and propagandists, and they are. What's being lost in all this, folks, is the property disposal that the ranchers have given over as consideration for what they do and the promise that the government gave them. You're looking at fiduciary breaches as trust breaches. These are not crimes. This is the fiduciary, the grantor, the holder of the property in trust, attacking the beneficiary. And they're doing it through the imposition of colorable crimes. This is way more than crime, what's going on. Remember Obama said, you don't trust the government. Folks, that word trust is so scaled across the face of this country, it's astonishing we don't talk about it more. Everything the government does as an employee, agent, whatever does, is a trust action. Remember the public trust? In fact, this is what's spoken about in the ethics rules for the bar. You got to keep the public trust. It doesn't mean that they're going to keep it. It just means you got to keep it in the perceiver. You can pretend like you're giving it out, but don't make sure that the perceiver doesn't understand that you're not giving it out. These trusts are literal, folks. You need to understand trusts, trust law, and what's going on there. It's probably the biggest contribution I can say I've brought to the mining law is understanding over a decade ago that what this land disposal starts out as continues and has to be is a trust. There's no authority in the government over it. It's an obligation and duty, not a power. The power is in the disposal to the one that's disposed. The power. Look for the power. That's your first thing. Now the beneficiary doesn't have a lot to say. He's got to do what he's got to do. But once he's doing it, he can't be attacked. And that's what's going on here. The consideration, they're doing it under the color of sustainable development. People don't even know what the words they're using. If I've wrongly identified some shill promoter, UN agenda promoter, well, I'm sorry, except that your words and the words being used and parroted are of that foreign imposition, and you have nobody has any place to be talking about another man's title. You don't have the right to impose your belief. You have right to the public land when some other man has title to what he has title to diminish that or determine whether or not there's proper fees paid. That's between the two parties, and those issues are before courts that are incompetent. We've got a whole lot more important thing than to focus on whether or not it's sustainable that a cow can live with a tortoise. It's not even close, and those tortoises are there because of the cows. Those families gave up consideration in the property. They gave up their property that was disposed to them to do what they were doing. That is being violated. And so under the color of all this other obstruction and division, the Bundys of the world are getting destroyed. It's nobody else's discussion. And this is right where the miners are. Don't tell me you have a higher title than I do over the land. Don't tell me you have equal surface rights to me. Law says I have it, like any property should be. I have the right to exclusive, peaceful enjoyment of doing what I have to do is granted to me by an act of Congress. So did the people doing grazing land. It's a slightly different law. Yes, there might be other multiple uses, but you don't disregard and put underneath the title of sustainability his property and consideration that's being violated. It is a breach of the trust and a breach of a contract. And you need to be listening for this, and you need to denounce everyone who embraces this nonsense. It's what's defeating us. And these are supposed to be people that are journalists. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. So I say, folks, I kind of moved. We don't talk alternative media. I really never understood that. I do a Twitter. I put beyond. We're behind the woodshed. We're beyond media. All y'all can be all what you are. We're beyond media here. Understand that. You're in the principles of your life, of how your life is supposed to work underneath law, not as the adulteration goes, but as it was supposed to be given to us in this country, different than anywhere else in the world. I've told you this before. I didn't make that up. I was told that. What was I told that by? Hernando de Soto. He was out of Peru. He got trained in Geneva. He's an economist. He's a bean counter man. And he did the analysis of why the West, all of the West, didn't even match the United States. And it rolled down to simply the fact of property. The records that are kept, why they're so important, the laws that help protect those, and the just courts. Not what we have now, not the Bar Association occupation, but the just courts. That impose the law for the protection and peace of the property owner, essentially the producer that produces the raw materials of a nation. Everybody else is a pretender. Everybody else has to take from those few people in the nation who gladly do what they do, as I said before. It's not even we're put underneath this, we have to make the raw materials. No, there's an incentive to make the raw materials. There's a way of life about it that you are incentivized in your own notions to go after. It's not the same as a typical slavery. It is, though, when you look at the state use of it. No, I'm not talking about today's, I'm talking about even the disposal. The disposal was to encourage people to go produce, because they couldn't get everybody to be a slave you didn't pay. You didn't pay right. Or you abused. So they made us slaves in a different way, and a lot of us will say, okay, that's fine. I just wanted peace in my life. I'm willing to go move boxes of rocks in order to get this little gold, silver, copper, so that I can hand it to someone else and make material for your iPhones. And so you can sit and you can build your thumbs up while you're scanning through your computer to go look at some movie or something. But what they've done now is they've attacked the property owners that were in production, and they're doing it by way of commerce. Why I brought up before, a firearm is an IRS tax code definition for something in commerce. These laws of commerce are extortion, commerce by extortion. That's Title 18. Almost, I think all of Title 18 is commerce-related charges. It's over and over, folks. This thing is so simple to understand what they're doing, and nobody steps up and says, whoa, you guys, you officials, you're abusing and usurping your offices to come after producers as criminals. And then I hear the people on the internet talking about their opinions on this matter. Drives me nuts at some level. But to bring sustainability in, you folks, let me give you the little clue. Go read the law. Go read the ONC Act of 1937. And I want you to go down and I want you to tell me where in there it says about sustainability. I want you to find for me what it actually says. And when you find that, and I want you to go find it because you need to see the black and white of this. You need to have a word in your mouth that you know is beyond doubt. When you hear these people talking about sustainability, they're shills or they're stupid. One or the other. These are universal agents for the universality of the world, or they're just stupid. They're actually trespassers. They're not respectful either. I don't put any judgment. They can decide that when they tell us whether or not they did it just by parroting, or whether they did some inspection and denied the fact of all this that's going on and still pushed a foreign agenda on the United States. Well, that's why I keep telling you, Hernando de Soto said this is a foreign thing that has to come in order to take down the United States and make its system of records and laws defunct. And the bar was right there to do that, weren't they? Weren't they? They're there to do that. And it says it right in their paperwork. I've read a lot of it already. So this is not hard to figure out, but you have to have a set principle in your mind over this, and it can't be these opinions that I'm hearing. You really have to slow down on another man or woman's property. If we don't start respecting that, we can't respect ourselves as the property to protect in our own. As I tell you, we have this importance about protecting borders, the border even of ourselves against others. So the government's going after the Bundys. They corralled them up and got them in Portland. They're bringing everybody up there. Then all of a sudden, now we get this 51-page indictment, including Pete Santilli. And I'm going to hold out really more that everybody's innocent until proven guilty, to show you again how violent this system is. They're innocent until proven guilty, and they're still held up in a cage. That used to be false imprisonment. It used to be you did not, unless you proved you're a violent felon, you didn't even have handcuffs put on you. How far are we away from that day, folks? And who did that was the Bar Association's court decisions to change that over time. So now all I have to do is, I feared for my life, I feared for my safety, and now you're a felon. You're deemed a dangerous felon on everything. Why did we allow that? Why are we allowing that, folks? This has to be torn. This has to be torn asunder. This has to be changed, well, you're going to be seeing what's happening. I've talked to you about it. You know it. And it's all going to be because we weren't doing enough to really get to the point of we the people controlling it. Right down to where we sit, everywhere, folks. Let's respect ourselves that much. Let's not hand ourselves over to the occupying force that's completely mentally deficient, subject to drug abuse, and psychological disorder like psychopathy and sociopathy. Can I end here? Can I hear the rally of the nation coming up and standing up and going and saying we will? Yes, we can. How about if we can that, folks? If Obama said if you can't trust the government, we're having a problem. I told you we have a problem, folks. How long ago did I call that out? He said, if you have a problem with trust with the government, if you can't trust the government, we have a problem. They know, folks. It's trust. It's confidence. That's the currency. It's the currency they keep controlled in you. As you keep chatting in a room, or keep talking, or don't really do much outside and complain more without actually addressing the wrong that you need to make right. In whatever small capacity you're able to do, that much is what you need to do. And I think with the internet, you can actually find people to magnify your action. So then what comes? Okay, so they get Cliven up there, they arrest him. I'm thinking, wow, they got all the boys. There's no one to protect the ranches, and so I was kind of thinking that they'd be moving on him. And I heard there might be. I haven't heard any proof yet. I don't really research too much more. Well, then another thing pops up. Remember, I told you that our lawsuit exposed the soft underbelly of the criminals. That I told you, that's what gives me my information, at least tells me if I was going to try and denounce that which exposed me, I'm going to want to bring out certain things in certain ways to cover up that problem again. So what I found very interesting is that this one lady who was involved, who was supposedly, I guess, the information agent inside the militia, the so-called Oregon militant occupation, what was her name? Shauna Cox. She comes out, and I find that interesting because that ties into the guy Cox up there in Alaska. I don't remember his name. He's been pulled up as some, they did some thing up there, so he's been, he's some terrorist up there. So these names are real consistent. Also, the innuendo of the name is sitting there to work on our mind as well. More of a lurid condition. Oregon militant, she now comes out and accuses the feds of committing works of the devil in a $666 billion lawsuit. Now, that made a lot of news for a while, so you need to know about this, because here's what I started looking at. I've got the links for this case. You need to kind of read through it. I think it's It's a Squibd account. I don't have that, so I can't download any of that stuff. I don't get all the accounts to get this. So I couldn't download. I can read it. I'll send you the link when you get done. But here's what the point is. If you read that, she calls it affirmative defenses in a lawsuit. Actually, in the caption, I don't understand what she's actually doing. So I realized that this was somebody told her to do this, that it was something, another patriot type thing, but it's actually fed to them. And what it occurred to me, when you read what they're talking about, although it's not accurate, they bring up everything that we sued in our lawsuit. Why would they do that? Why would she out of the blue say this? And then you look at her complaint, so-called, and she doesn't tie the Bar Association problem into her crime. In other words, she can't, in this paper, in any paper, you can't point your finger at someone else's wrongdoing to exonerate your own. You can't point out someone else's wrongdoing to exonerate your own wrongdoing. And that's what this paper tries to do. It does not connect up the bar at all with her wrongdoing. And so I found this very interesting thing that's going on in this. They're being stupid at going for $66 billion. She doesn't actually tie it together to the people that she's outing to be the problem, her problem, which is the Bar Association. It's a $66 billion with a B. It's 666,666,666 is what she's done. Okay, fun. But not realistic. That on its face looks like a frivolous lawsuit as well, which they're keen to with these paper terrorists. It's why you don't want to go that direction. There's just so much about this so-called lawsuit and affirmative defense paper that's wrong in its application that exposes the subject matter of our lawsuit that I think that we're looking at what I was telling you before. This is to make that idea ludicrous in people's mind. And this, in her supposed lawsuit and affirmative defense, I don't know, was submitted by her attorney if she has one, and it wasn't properly formed, and it had no proper connection, and it wasn't properly placed within the case. She allowed the case by not challenging the jurisdiction of the court and then going after the bar. See, they did it wrong. I can watch how it's supposed to be done. And then the judge comes in and dismisses it. Well, it's kind of interesting. How could he do that if she's blaming the bar for her problems? Well, she can't use them to exonerate her own. She hasn't actually indicted the bar, so a bar member comes in and dismisses her claims. It's not a conflict of interest, is it? And so she's looked at, this whole thing it doesn't get anywhere. It looks like a nut. She gets to be told that she's got a tinfoil hat on it. And this is just what patriots do, so they can get around the fact that, in fact, if she'd have done it right, she would have brought the challenge by way of another, she was out, so maybe not a habeas, maybe a habeas upon the process that she did. She is under by an incompetent court and judge, but she would have challenged as a quo warranto, the competency. And once that they couldn't answer, or they did, doesn't really matter. You just want to see what the fact is. I don't really care whether they have an answer or not. We'll see what it is. Then you go after these people, and then you bring your lawsuit. So you see, this is a misapplication of something that we resolved 2.5 years ago, and I can see the determination of the reason for this is to make it sound like what we did doesn't have any merit. In fact, this was done wrong. There was no purpose behind it. The affirmative defenses are irrelevant at this point with the way she's done it. And until she complains that the court is incompetent and the judges are incompetent, it really doesn't go anywhere. And guess what? Her attorneys are really duty-bound not to expose the brotherhood, aren't they? Don't bring shame on that brotherhood. Don't dare tell them that we're doing this wrong. No, let her file frivolous paperwork that we'll just bat away real easy, and no one knows the difference. And all the subject matter she talks about in people's minds looks like it's been dealt with. And if not dealt with, then it doesn't rise to the level of a tangible harm. And so this is all of mine. As I looked at this, there's somebody behind the scenes of this whole thing is doing exactly what it looks like is going on with respect to our outing the system for the organized criminal syndicate that it is. Oh, understand that this is a technique. When I saw the 66 billion, I didn't really have to go farther. That it really spoke to our case, even incorrectly, but got close enough. I said, wow, there's nothing in the world right now that would speak that way, that would become that close to what we did and be so wrongly applied. If you know what she is talking about, you would have applied the law and the remedies differently, folks. You understand? You're getting that. See, when you know how. So I tell you, learn the black and white, learn what's going on, learn some of these processes. It's not so confusing. They keep us confused, and we keep ourselves confused by not rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work. And as long as that happens, them, they'll win. They're going to beat this. They're going to expose. They're not going to be exposed the way they are. So I'm fascinated at one level to watch the powers that be the powers that are, the real ones that do harm against us. They are working against what we did in 2013. And I think maybe only a few people that understand that can see this thing that I'm telling you. So if you can't quite get that, or you have the sense that sounds right, maybe I would ask you to settle down and prove that to yourself. And you're going to see start to see more of what I'm looking at and how to keep track. They aren't transparent to me, folks. They really are not. There may be something that's transparent to me, but not this. To me, this is a huge awareness for people. So, I'm excited at one level because we have a very major foundational point to start. If this is only the start, we're coming from a very powerful place. It's so powerful that even when we're not even in the game, they're trying to defeat it in people's mind generally. They're trying to throw out, see, all this stuff goes out and it sounds like nonsense. So when we come along and we say, well, this is what you need to do, they go, oh, no, they didn't. See, that Shauna Cox tried that. It didn't work for her, and it's nothing of what was done, what we did, or how you go about it. This is what I tell you about doing things right. You can watch how it's done wrong as well. And to this, if you know what's in that paper that they're talking about, she's just shotgunning this whole thing. If you know that much, why didn't you put that into proper remedy? Instead of doing some outlandish $666 billion lawsuit. It may be that much value, but see that just the number is outlandish. That's enough to overcome people. So when I'm saying you got to do everything really correctly, that's what we're talking about, is to not insult or not suppress the perceivers of what's going on as well when you take your action. So I'm just putting you on notice here. I'm looking at this thing. This is absolutely going after what the soft underbelly that literally we eviscerated this whole thing if we would just get more people to recognize that. If you're in an occupied territory, one resistance fighter or a handful of resistance fighters identifies the others, if you didn't know they're amongst you, but it's not going to stop them. It takes the rest of the people. And giving us license and giving us if you needed an inspiration, there's people been before us talking. I don't do this very much, but here's a statement that's been read. I think it was John Locke that said it. I got a link for to the document. Wherever law ends, remember, extrajudicial law ended, folks. As soon as we went into extrajudicial, law ended. So I don't need to do any more analysis for you. You really don't need it. Extrajudicial means law ended. You need the court in order to go to enforce your law. Hernando de Soto explained that to us. If I didn't know it before. The system of laws in the court systems that would enforce the law. Extrajudicial is beyond judicial. You're in a lawless state. I don't know how much simpler and more clearly I can state that and not have to go a whole lot of places to prove it. They told us. The government itself told us. These people, the FBI says that they're standing up for terrorism. They're the terrorists. There's no law. They're bringing the places into courts like Article 1, Article 4 because there's no law. It doesn't matter. No one says where the law is supposed to go and be. So lawlessness continues. Wherever law ends, tyranny begins. Wherever law ends, tyranny begins. NDAA, folks, was if we didn't know about it at all before, tyranny began. This is the offshoot of all of that. Now, you can deny it, you can think about there's other things, throw all your ideas, oh, well, it's because of the districts that were made in 1871, and therefore they're not just, folks, so you don't have the power. It doesn't matter if they're not just. They're an occupying force that will deal with you. And guess what? You think that you know about the Act of 1871 that made districts that were part of a corporation. Why don't you use that? Because that's what I've been talking about with the Article 1 and Article 4 problem that the courts are having right now. We did. Why don't you take your knowledge and put it in application instead of whining about it all the time? That there are districts shows you there's a veneer of authority that's not consistent with Article 3. That should be your in. And don't expect the criminals in those veneer offices to listen to you. You got to have more. So wherever law ends, tyranny begins. If the law be transgressed to another's harm, and whoever in authority exceeds the power given him by the law, and makes use of the force he has under his command, to compass that upon the subject, which the law allows not, ceases in that to be a magistrate, and acting without authority, may be opposed as any other man who by force invades the right of another. This is acknowledged in subordinate magistrates. So here we have the magistrate and the magistrate judge if we go to the federal level. He that hath authority to seize my person in the street may be opposed as the thief and a robber if he endeavors to break into my house to execute a writ, notwithstanding that I know he has such a warrant and such a legal authority as will empower him to arrest me abroad. Folks, what have I said all this time? That statement is theft by extortion, felony theft by extortion, felony theft, felony conversion, a seat of authority appearing under color of authority to steal and harm you. Why do you need more? They went extrajudicial in this country. Why do you need more? You can go against all these people. Now, I'm suggesting do it in paper at this point. Make the record. Same thing I was suggesting that these Harney County condition, make the record put the record out that the process that will issue from the powers that be, whatever they're, the federal or the state officials, is incompetent against you first. So when it happens, you can point that out. They didn't do that. They're not doing it now. They're not doing it after this supposed lawsuit. They're doing the lawsuit of $66 billion instead of what they ought to rightfully do against the tyranny that they now face, which John Locke was saying becomes there is no authority in the color of authority. It's as a thief and robber. And so Lysander Spooner should come into your mind. All these thinkers and these people that seem to be a lot smarter than I was because they figured it out without so much as it took to get me to see it. 5 cops wanting to point their guns and threaten to kill me. That was my wake-up call. That's where I got the rose-colored glasses slapped away from me. I was in my little utopia as well, knowing, well, I guess it's just how we live. It's just going to have to be underneath the gun. We're in a free country. I guess we got to pay our fines and taxes and all that stuff. I didn't think more about it. Till one day I said, well, maybe tomorrow I may not have been able to think about it because they'd have taken me out. Well, what's wrong with that picture? And so, that starts my journey 30 years ago or so. That all of the time, theft by extortion under color of authority and conversion under color of authority has been stated by John Locke in section 202 of his chapter 18 of tyranny, that we have the obligation, the right, and the obligation of response. We have to respond against the tyrant. The tyrant is no different than any thief or robber, and worse, I would say. And we now, if you think about this, folks, just take a moment and think about that. These are thieves and robbers. These are people that are underneath the influence of drugs and mental incapacitants. They have no capacity, even though they want to just, their capacity is based on whether they follow the rules, and I can find that they don't. And these people are running your life. These are tyrants that we've now, look how much we allow that in our lives, how far away from any concept of living a life that was promised by our so-called forefathers, at least the inspiration part we could see, the part that was inspiring the very first part of the preamble and what the purpose of a lawful and legitimate government and functionaries and instrumentalities is, but to protect life, liberty, and property, that they're destroying in every one of us. And then we find, how much more proof do you need to find when you find that their own people in their own, their government, within their society, says they are consistently and continually planning to do so. That you hear people come on to the networks and talk about them implementing this very same plan under the color of being a journalist, or a color of being someone knowledgeable, or it's a color of someone who says they have experience better than what you do, and promotes this crime against us, shouldn't be okay with you. And I don't mean just, oh, I don't like it. I mean, okay, let's stop this. Let's stop the noise, stop the division. Let's become a cohesive force to be reckoned with. And that leads me to my next thing. I don't promote so well, but I need to get you to understand that you need to do this. No matter where you are in the United States, for sure, that's a citizen of the United States, and don't get all weirded out by that. That just means, in the context of the mining law, that means you have the right to receive property sold to you, exclusive possession against all the world. That's all this part. That status is before the one that they indentured. All these names have different connotations depending on the context. So we have a petition to sign at jeffersonminingdistrict.com, and all you're signing, all you need to do is put a name and an email. And what you're doing, and thank you to all y'all that have been doing that. I want more. I just want to flood these people with this rejection, unified rejection. Go to jeffersonminingdistrict.com, find the sign the petition. It's on the right-hand side. Click the button. It takes you over the petition page. Read through all the information. And if you would, please fill out a name, a first name, a last name, and an email. And click Send Now. And that thing will go out to the 8 committee members and the Jefferson Mining District for notice that you filed, that you did not get consent. You did not meet with that attorney who told the committee, the Natural Resource Committee, that he talked with you and that he got your consent to represent you before the committee for purposes of making state policy. He claims that he represents you. Every one of you listening to me that's a citizen of the United States that can accept the grant, and those that are out of the country that intend to be citizens of the United States can accept the grant under the Mining Law Grant Act of Congress. Your rights are being affected by this guy claiming he talked to you and he has right of representation for you. If that didn't happen, that's what this petition is. Please get over to jeffersonminingdistrict.com. Just click on over. It's pretty simple. We got a video to watch to show you where he says it. This is not made up. If you haven't heard it before, you need to hear it. It's the last 20 minutes of the video in case it doesn't auto-start there. It's the last 20 minutes. Listen. Listen with intelligence, folks, what this guy is saying. Listen how they say they throw the miners under the bus. This is the state legislature bringing in a friend of theirs to do this to us. That's you, every one of you. Whether you ever intended to mine or not, this affects you. So I'm asking, I want a ton of people to show up and just send this message. It's one little thing to do that is a organized response, unified response against this tyranny the attorneys are bringing on and the state legislature is allowing. I don't know why a couple keystrokes and some mouse clicks is too much. And please tell other people to fill it out. And a lot of people, I noticed a lot of people, I haven't seen many, I get a little, because there's a Twitter button, if someone does this, I get to see that someone punched Twitter to get it out. There's also a Facebook and Twitter button to tell your friends. If you would, please use those. I don't have Twitter, Facebook, so I can't see the response there. But so just again, this is a way to speak to these people that are acting as a force against you, who have taken representation of your life and your property and your ability and rights. Folks, if you don't understand this, this is what I tell motorcycle riders, and they still don't get it. They refuse this. This is what I don't understand about people. The same motorcycle rider that can be found by a government agent to be traveling down a place that's off-road, not on a vested highway, but off-road, who can get a ticket for that, cannot get a ticket for that if he says he's a miner. If you would just strap a pan to your bottom when you're riding around and have some indication you'd like to go mining, I mean, have the idea that it's not a complete lie that you're out there. If you find some gold, you wouldn't want to pick it up off the ground. That if you had a pan on your rig and you're going down through there and you said, I'm prospecting, they can't stop you. Is the power we're talking about being stolen by an attorney that says he represents you? And I can tell you, you'll read, if you listen very carefully and you know about the mining law, you'll hear how incompetent he is. Absolutely incompetent. But this is what they did. This is part of the system. Back in 1995, Thousand Friends of Oregon did the same thing. They stood in the legislature and in the committee and they said, we are the representatives of all the property owners in Oregon for the purposes of creating state policy. And state policy is not property rights. State policy infringes upon it. It's under state interests that they push, not your interests. And this happens everywhere. We just got this one caught. This, I'm sure, that's everywhere that people can respond to. And so, if you will, just get over to JeffersonMiningDistrict.com, find the petition, go over into the page, read the information. You can watch. You can even read it just to educate yourself on how we're being destroyed at your supposed state legislatures, representing you by these same attorneys. Is how they've also made policy over years that causes what you see in Harney County. And that's outside of the coordination failure. So, where we have the right to step up for tyranny, against tyranny, I don't think it's too much and simple. We don't have to go against a judge. We don't have to go, physically go and attack anybody to stop them from attacking us or stop them, beat them down or whatever. We can send a petition. I think that's a lot more, if you can say the word civil, than we've ever been able to do things in the past. Now we could start sending you want to send a message, folks. You're going to shoot across the bow. Help send that petition out. If you live in America and you're born here, or if you're out of the country thinking that you're coming in at some point, you intend to become a citizen here, and don't get weirded out about all these terms. It's just the way you're treated anyway. So you better step up to some status. I'm asking you to step up to a status that's protectable. You're going to be at a protectable place? Are you going to have See, I did it too. I try to avoid this because this is another patriot nonsense. It's alienation we're talking about. Unalienable, not alienable. That's commerce. They get you talking this nonsense. It's unalienable. UN, unalienable. Or inalienable, IN. Do you want the ones that you have inherent in you, the UN, the right of power of alienation that's in you, not to be divested from you? Or do you want the inalienable? You can pronounce that any way you want. That is the civil side given to you. Property comes with unalienable rights. That's not the civil side. It's the rights they can't take from you. The power of alienation. It means it can't be taken without your consent. That's how they're taking it. You don't know that. And you don't say, wait a minute, you trespassed. And you did it under color of authority. That's a felony. That's a felony theft by extortion on the property, and it's felony conversion against my right. There's two different purposes in those. They sound almost identical, but they address two different subject matters. So, unified voice, and especially the miners. I would hope that the more miners would be coming and understanding what the power of this is, and they're actually speaking out. But it seems like the microcosm of the miner is the macrocosm we know as America. Most people are either afraid, cowards, to protect their own property, and really, as I said before, probably not worthy of the property that they have, or themselves, because themselves, it extends down to them. They have no respect for themselves, or they're afraid, which is not an excuse, or they just want to remain ignorant. And that's not all those things are not good, and I don't know how to make it softer so you all like the change that you allow on yourself. This is really, here's some of the old stuff that was talked about back in the day. We have such a high response. When I talk to you about trusts, we have such a high duty. It's above even the trust that we see violated, to show you the responsibility that came with keeping that republic. So it requires an active participation. That's partly what Jefferson Mining District is about. It's not about being a membership. There's a lot of people don't understand. We're not a 501c3. We're not a state organization. It doesn't have a state charter. That's just a legal association under the state authority. Mining districts aren't that. A lot of miners don't understand any about this. They think they know, but they don't. And that's really a big distinction to be made. I'll tell you that. So there's ways to do things and there's ways to not. There's things that you're amenable to, there's things that you're not. Do you want to create yourself into a place that there's barriers against the encroachment against you that you can define objectively in black and white, or do you want to make it soft and fuzzy logic? That, to me, is the most important point that I've been trying to tell you to understand. Put yourself in a state, a status, a condition that has an alternative reality to identify in black and white. A producer, a soil disposal patentee or assignee can do that. You can't do that under inalienable rights, under tenancies, under contracts. And worst of all is the application you don't understand, that you're actually applying it to you. An applique, you stick it to you. You're sticking it to yourself. So let me get the word out a little cleaner, I guess. It's unalienable. 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 So, that's the inherent power of alienation that cannot be taken from you without some official committing the felony theft by extortion or felony conversion. Inalienable is not subject to your determination, but those that have invested it in you. Inalienable. Stop the nonsense of unalienable. It has nothing to do with commerce. It's not on a lien. Not that you're not lienable. That would be inalienable, which you have no authority. Because it's given to you, it's invested, like those civil rights of yours. So, again, the specificity of this is paramount to keep. Well, the Republic can keep it, as I just said, that it's imperative that you keep the language that you need to come from. And I haven't found yet that they can actually transgress the language. That's why I found a long time ago. This is all long old stuff, folks. I'm just kind of regurgitating myself over and over, it seems. I've said this all before, but I'm going to say it again. It's important that you keep the proper language. And I'm finding out more and more, it doesn't take a lot to talk about that as well. It doesn't take reams of discussion. I don't have to cite to lots of laws and the case nonsense. When you cite the case law, aren't you just agreeing that court that was incompetent had authority to give you the guidance? So be careful on what you think you're doing with all this citable case law. And on top of the fact, I just had a friend of mine tell me, he goes, that stuff that's on the internet, you can't trust any of it. I go, yeah, that's right. None of it. I've found very few case citations in all these paperwork that everyone says is the silver bullet, the answer, that they're right. You've got to go back and research the cases. Very, very few are cited correctly, and very, very few are even pertinent to what you're talking about there. And I think that was also part of the deception that the government's using, whoever the controllers are, They have tons of people. Let's throw this out there. Let's say it's the bee's knees on how you respond, and it's all wrong. And we suck it up like it's nectar, the insects that we are, the adult insects that we are. Just suck it up, thinking it's the right thing to do. And like I said, I mean, for me, I look at Shauna Cox's petition, and it makes no sense. I couldn't make sense of it. Trying to make sense of it, I couldn't make sense of it, except that it made sense that it was an example of how the system would take these subject matters it was speaking of and pass them through as harebrained ideas are not relevant and not worthy of further mention. So it's up to us to make the discussion more proper. And so when the story starts to get thrown out, you got this thing going on with the Ammon Bundy and this and that. See, they try to go. You can see this envelopment of anybody who spoke out against the system. You have to understand that's part of the dynamic. They're going to come after you. Speak out, they're coming after you. You have to be able to understand that and have made fortifications or have people around you. That's why it's better to work in groups. That this Sheriff Glenn Palmer is being attacked now because he stepped up and he called himself a constitutional sheriff. Well, that was kind of an interesting statement. They're all constitutional. Every one of them is constitutional sheriff, even the one that won't claim it. And in the state that Glenn Palmer's at, in Oregon, the sheriff can't be impeached, but he can be charged with crimes under the Constitution and thrown out of office. So they can't deny being a constitutional sheriff because that Constitution is what they're liable to if they go wrong. And there's about 4 things you can do that, which we are setting up on the not against him, but in a different issue, different sheriff who's becoming a problem. No one is off limits here, folks. The judges, the DA, they're all fair game when they become a tyranny. And to show you the control of the occupier, the Bar Association, in their infinite wisdom, made the action for usurpation of office solely commenced and prosecuted by the district attorney. My question to you is, what if the district attorney now is the one who's in usurpation of office? To show you that there's little glitches in their matrix that allow us in and to make up different thoughts on how you're going to approach that problem to show that the occupier didn't meet the law. So what is that? That's a big international law violation. You get to press it. Do you think that a drug-induced psychopath, mental midget in a perceived office criminal is going to listen to you? You know, that's highly unlikely. So you have to really come to terms with this. But so Sheriff Glenn Palmer is under attack because he calls himself a constitutional sheriff. Like the Sheriff's Association, all their sheriffs are not constitutionalists. But see, they're after this title. It's why you've got to be careful on how you get yourself identified. It's why a long time ago I thought it was funny they would call me a constitutionalist. I said, wait a minute, did you take an oath of office? Yeah. Well, didn't you say you uphold the Constitution? Well, yeah. Well, then aren't you the constitutionalist? I didn't take that oath. Dumb look on their face. They're lost. Now they're going to go to some other point, another point of departure in order to try and get you to capitulate to their lack of authority. It's real. These people are not that smart, folks. And it's easy to denounce the titling, and if they keep bringing it up, you go after them for it. Did you take an oath of office to support a constitution, folks? Some of you have. Some of you have brought that in and made it important for the rest of your life. Well, that's fine. Well, I'm talking about someone that's active duty in the service, that's wearing a blue uniform instead of the camouflage browns, or whatever blues, whatever the Air Force wears. They're the ones that took the oath. They're the ones that said there was a constitution to follow. They're the ones liable to that constitution. So they're the constitutionalists. And so we start getting it, we don't stop letting them call us names, and we start putting the trustee in his place, And I think at least the word in your mouth becomes a much better place to start from than where they put you. Doesn't matter that they beat you up. But Glenn Palmer's sheriff's wife had to speak out because of stories being told, the noise that comes out to try and vilify her husband. This is kind of like almost unprecedented in my mind that she would even come up and explain that what's being told about her husband, about where he was and all this, and his participation in the murder of Lavoy Finicum and his agreement with what the FBI did and all this stuff. She has to step out now to try and to state and protect what she sees as a wrong. So this is what happens. He has to have someone that, I don't know if he had to, but she did. She felt compelled. His wife felt compelled to bring the narrative more to the truth. While the Sheriff's Association that Palmer is involved in is asked to investigate Palmer's conduct. If you don't know how incestuous this entire thing is, you can conceive of it. I'm saying it's literal. In fact, I was doing some profession standards and certifications review to do a complaint. Long read. I didn't even get through most of it. I just looked for certain things I need and then looked for all the exceptions in case those are conditioned, and I move with those things. But if you read that, you absolutely understand that this entire certification process, even though it's a department of the state, is actually a federal imposition. And this is not a surprise. I mean, it's just more confirmation that you live under a federal veneer and don't even know it. In fact, I was going back to that indictment, the 51-page indictment. They say state and federal district. Guess what? The state of Oregon isn't named then, are they? The state and federal district is where this happened. What did I tell you about their district courts have their territory? This is not a literal territory. This is the veneer territory that these people did these concepts in. If they knew how to attack that, there is no state and federal. There's supposed to be two sovereignties. They aren't in a district. One's a state. I mean, this is pretty simple stuff, but it seems to go by everybody. That the Sheriff's Association is supposed to be the constitutional sheriffs no matter what they want to admit to, wants Palmer investigated over his conduct regarding this issue over there. So there's a lot of pressure coming on a guy that I think is pretty upstanding generally. I've never talked to the man. In a way, I feel like I want to expose some things to him so he can expose the rest of these pretenders, even the Sheriff's Association. Probably be a good thing if he was kicked out. But not on the basis of an investigation that he did wrong. But this is what you're up against, and this is what may come against you. That his wife, it was, within just a short time, she made her statement. I think it was on the 9th. They had come out on the 8th. See, so she's responding to their attack, and they will attack. They're eating one of their own. Why? Because it exposes this crime against us in the state. These associations, remember, these are just legal entities as well. They're no different than the Bar Association is the Sheriff's Association. These are legal entities. Remember, the political parties, Democratic Party and the Republican Party, are associations. They're just legal entities, folks. I don't know why people don't pick up on this. They are so far down the feeding chain, it's not even funny. That they have as much power as they do is really an astonishing witness. So the rattling of the sabers comes out. There's lots of accusations being flowed. You have to make sure your record. See, I guess the point about the wife coming out is she's trying to make the record correct, right? So that the narrative doesn't run down the wrong track. This is what I tell you about your records. They have to be collecting up and writing. It's a lot of work, but you got to delineate and clearly specify everything that's going wrong. I guess the most important things, really, because everything goes wrong. It's an endless list of wrong that happens. You got to be careful to limit it. But I mean, you go after the most important wrongs, and you have to document them. And it doesn't matter that they don't listen to it. You document it anyway. And the way I try to do is I'll make a paper. It's like a domino. I build one domino and I lay it up. I build another one, another one, another one, another one. Each different paper builds on the next event. And so all I'm doing is I'm just building on the paperwork I did before. So it all ends up becoming one statement. It's a package. One supports the next. It's the package of evidence. It's the chain of title of the wrong. And who done it. When. So I only have to do these documents once. There's still a lot of work, but you pull them together. And the domino, and when it's time to go after, you just hit the back domino, and those dominoes start falling, and the last one falls right on the head of the one you're after. Is that a silver bullet answer? Is that an end-all be-all? No, you're dealing with a criminal syndicate. Get over it. So the wife comes up for the wife of Glenn Palmer going to try and think she's going to make the record right. That's so important. Don't know how successful she's going to be because things can be twisted. So you have to be careful not to speak too much. Not sure that she did. I'm just saying she came out right after the Sheriff's Association wants to attack her husband. One of their own. They're eating their own here. Why would they do that? So they've got the system now. You're seeing how it works. It's got to protect itself. It's got to send out the saber rattling. It's got to warn you all off. Feds issue warning on revenge threats. Folks, don't threaten. Don't seek revenge. I keep telling you, it's better to go right at them underneath an obligation and duty. Like I told you we did when we went after the Secretary of Interior. We're obligated by Title 18, Section 4 to say there's a crime going on in your office and you're the one done it. Show cause how you aren't committing felonies and treason. Now, the FBI had responded to go try and beat us up a bit, but they couldn't because then they found out they were going to be in violation of 18 U.S.C. 3 as an accessory to the felony that we identified. To have her show cause that she failed to do. Is that a silver bullet? No, but at least we have record made that we're not the terrorists. We're not coming as a threat, as a mere retaliation. You come with law, the purpose, and the right to do so. To do what, folks? To keep the peace that the governments failed to keep. Responding to a rising tide of threats in the wake of the standoff in the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge near Burns, Oregon, federal authorities are warning law enforcement agencies around the nation to be on the lookout for retaliatory violence from extremists affiliated with an anti-government movement. With the anti-government movement. I'm not so sure they were saying it's anti-government, but that's the spin. They're saying that they're anti-bad government. And they're still involved with it, but they're not calling it out. So I'm not going to go on. We've heard this before. This is like the Fusion Center type stuff. But the point is that don't come out. Don't let yourself be identified in a retaliatory sense. That there are people coming out in this shows me ignorance across the nation. Because there's ways to do this that wouldn't. And I would wish that all those people that sense a retaliatory responses in them to go get more educated and come together with the more proper attack. Why don't we do that? Why don't we exhaust that in us before we have to go to this retaliation? You notice they go to retaliation. That's the first thing I try to invoke in our letters when we're going to go after an official. We believe, we give the reason, we believe you're going to retaliate. Don't do that. It'll just bring on more woe. Call it out first. So what you do is you put that on the record that it can happen, so if it does, you at least predicted it, and it doesn't go well for them. Don't just strike out. Get educated, get understanding what's going on, and properly respond. So anyway, the word's out. If you want to be, like we talked here last few weeks, if you want to fly the Gadsden flag and all, you're going to be part of this anti-government nonsense. It's all those that, again, they call you names because they got nothing else to call you, and they want to they keep calling you names, and you forget they're the ones that are the criminals. It's pretty simple. And so my thought is, why don't you just organize up, quit threatening and be retaliatory, and get inside what the law provides for to give you the standing to go right after them more directly without the outward threat. In other words, people that are interfering with you now become the felony themselves. Whether they want to agree with it, you still file the criminal complaint. Not prematurely, after you have the record made. So the feds will call you it's bashful to say you're the problem. And they'll try to set up the record, and they'll tell all their own. Remember, all these people are all, the Sheriff's Association went after another sheriff. They're not excused from this felony. They're a part and parcel of it. It's a military execution of things. Don't ever forget that part. In fact, I'll just put it this way, you'd be very, very remiss to consider otherwise. Have it part of your plan. That, again, The government wants to be registering you, identifying you, titling you, putting you in a box so they can keep track in their big data swings and their surveillance. That I didn't report on this earlier, but I think I'm going to now because I thought it was an interesting thing, again, where there's, see, I got something missed out. Where there is a problem that people don't recognize because they don't read deep enough, and they just accept what the government authority tells them. There was this little thing way back in December that this year all drones above a certain size would have to be registered. And I put it up to talk about it, but it passed, and I didn't really think I got so much more to talk about that I thought was more important. But something came up that is, okay, I can use this to explain to you how to pay attention and to get something in your arsenal to come back after them. That wasn't your bottom arsenal. That was just in your weaponry to address the wrong, the tyranny against you. It's not the arsenal you sit on. The unmanned aircraft system registration service is online now. That you were supposed to do by the 21st for any of these aircraft, these little we used to call them model airplanes. That you were supposed to register them if they're a certain size. First of all, I mean, I don't know how they even got this rule through. So that's administratively, that's cause number one. But then to make it simpler for everyone, I noticed, and so just to see how, to show you how simple it can get, regardless of what that rule is and what you want to do, and it's through Title V, if you want to go after the fact that they never made the rule through comment and all that kind of neat stuff you have to get in their face. There's no threat to you there, folks. They have a little website that you get to go to. It says register my drone. Well, I couldn't get in through the register my drone thing, but I did notice one thing. To get into the register my drone thing, whatever that form is, you have to create an account. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is before they can accept and they have the right to take your information, they have to have an OMB number, an Office of Management and Budget number, for the purpose of taking the information. And because they passed this rule so quickly through, I highly doubt there was any OMB Office of Administration of Government investigation of whether or not the web page has an OMB number for the purpose that's lawful. That I would say, whether or not you want to get involved with the fact of being caught after without a registration number, if you want to start this ahead of time, you send a letter into the FAA and ask, what was the OMB number that you have in order to do what you've done to take the information from me from the website? In fact, show me the lawful process you went through to promulgate the rule. That's two things to start you off, folks. It's not that hard, no threat. For those of you that are interested in this. I think anybody can be interested in this. They're now regulating airspace down to the ground, folks. This is supposed to be federal commerce. Oh, that's point number 3. So even in this little thing, it was important earlier, I thought, registration is confiscation as well. That's why you really should be important with this, because that's like your guns too. The things they call firearms aren't. And you think they are, and you got to register them in commerce, and registration's confiscation. They're doing it here for these drones. They're doing it for a whole lot more that they're not telling you about, but neither here nor there. Here's an easy way to engage an administrative side system without threat to you to give you practice on how. You want to really get involved, at least get in there and you can get yourself in a place where you get to have the standing to go in and join the rule, promulgate it until it's done right under Title V. How hard is that? But you get to have, again, it's even less risky than a traffic ticket. Traffic ticket you may have to pay anyway, but this thing you don't really have to pay anything. Why do you want to do it? Because they're going to charge you like $200,000 in fees or fines or whatever the heck it is. How do they do that? Because they presume you to be a commerce entity. Why are you even having to sign this then? See, they've mischaracterized your use of an airspace that seems to be outside of their jurisdiction, inside a state outside of their jurisdiction. to come in and knock on your door and tell you, register yourself for our purposes, which they don't tell you and they haven't done right. The government is limited. It's up to you to make sure it stays in the box it was put in when this thing was put together. That's what these challenges do. I don't like that they are presumed to be doing the law and that we have to respond. To me, that's a trust breach, that I even have to pay attention. That's not my first question, though, at this point. How about if we just get involved to say, wait a minute, you did enough of these wrong. How about if we change that little presumption that you do right? So I can go back to doing what I'm supposed to do, and I don't have to worry about you coming in and forcing authority under my rights and then committing felonies and felonies, whether they be by theft, by extortion, or felony conversion. I hope I'm not speaking too loud, too fast. I get on a roll. I'm sorry about that part, but I can't help it. It doesn't come out filtered that way. I'm not the broadcaster that way. Maybe I wish I was sometimes. But the podcast, the Spreaker, and all those people on Spreaker, anyone listening, remember, when I post it up later, the Blogcaster link is there for you to get these links. I think they're so very important. I'm not sure enough people appreciate the links, and not enough people, or maybe go and get this information. But so here, when I look at stuff. I don't know if you looked at the same thing I did. I haven't heard many people talk about this, so I'm assuming I may be looking a little different at things. But I know an OMB number is required for the taking of information, and I didn't see an OMB number on this underneath this form. It's at least a plausible question. And until they get that resolved, they really can't expect a registration from you. Think about that one. So when they send you a form and there's an OMB, look very carefully to research what the OMB is about. It may not be valid either. In fact, I've seen that a couple times with when they give you a site, when they put a big old parking sticker, a tow sticker on your stuff in the public land. It's one of those 30-day stickers. I realize that's even out of the 14-day cattle call that they do for campers from the BLM. 30 days is well over twice. So then you go look and you see what the OMB number's for. And for me, I'm sitting out in the middle of the public land. I've developed a sanctuary out there. Why did I do that? Because sanctuaries are protected under international law. You might want to go look at like 7 areas of education, science, museums, sanctuaries of sorts. They're supposed to be protected. Well, so I was up in the forest for 7 years before I had to find something else. There was something else more important. I had to move on, but 7 years they couldn't get at me because then they tried to put these little these towing stickers on. The tow sticker had to be on, I noticed, to be usable for the company that was going to come and steal your stuff off the land. And then I noticed the OMB number and I went and researched it, and it had nothing to do with where I was at. It had to do with facilities, just like the BLM Authority is relevant to facilities, the things they create in the public land to aid the general public. And so the sticker was not valid. And so I would scrape it off, first of all, and I'd take the wad of the scrapings I had and I'd stick it in an envelope and send it back to the sheriff and say, this is improperly applied. You're violating the law to use it. And those are the people that are calling you out to harass me. They're committing crimes. At the time, I didn't understand. Maybe I should have said you need to arrest them. The point is that looking at these forms, they have to have requirements. If you didn't think that the government is limited form of government, you're not paying attention. The problem is every moment we have to limit the government because it's been given itself license to the Bar Association to be presumed and given deference that what they do is lawful. It's a complete adulteration of the fact. And so I'm telling you, maybe you're hearing this for the first time. Maybe you know. If you know, we should have been moving a lot faster on checking this. If you never heard that, maybe that's something you can start focusing on. Even within the constraint of a general authority, they don't have that general of an authority, and it's up to us to figure out what that is. So they ask for more information, and you'll give it to them without looking at the law. The same thing with the 3809. You could try and do a plan of operation on 3809. Look at the OMB. It doesn't pertain to certain minerals. So why are all the miners filling it out? I don't know. Same reason why hundreds of thousands of people, 300,000 people, has filled out this form or one like it for the FAA to register their drones. People would rather argue with me instead of go do the simple study to figure this out, that we really don't have that much work to do. And no different than I've told everybody that gets these notices of noncompliance. Well, it doesn't apply to you. Send that letter. Why make a big issue about this? If they don't want to agree, then they're just criminals. So, I mean, it's not that really that difficult at some level, but you have to have enough knowledge to know that's exactly what it is without doubt. As I've told quite a few people this week, you have to know this stuff so you don't have a doubt when it comes down when you're down to the nitty-gritty. You have to have no doubt in your mind that what you're moving on is substantial. And what they got is nothing. And hopefully you're not talking too much, but you're talking just enough to let them know that. These people put all these impositions, they move themselves along. People have figured out how to get inside the government and give themselves the benefit of the government largesse. A lot of that's in tax credits and all this other thing, whatever loopholes you want to talk about. So industry wants to make the most profit, and the government, the Bar Association being just another legal entity, has given themselves, it's all private law, given themselves this license to do this. That it's not unexpected why the TPP type thing was a private law coming on, been made. They're going to try and make this a treaty going through, or they'll make it soft law. Make it by the rules. See, they'll promulgate rules after it if it doesn't become a treaty. Just know that these put special dispensation to industry. Why? Because it's now beyond all trust obligations that corporations actually succeed whether or not you get to. That the TPP issue is now, there was something change made, a real sneaky change, they say, and it sure was sneaky enough. It took me a little bit to kind of see it. A sneaky change to the TPP drastically extends criminal penalties. In other words, the corporations will be able to come against you. Well, we're talking about copyright material, and as subtle as this is, they changed the term paragraph in the original to subparagraph, which eliminated a protection and expanded the ability of the government and the corporations to come against you, just by the three-letter word designation added to the word paragraph. And you'll get how they did this. I'm not going to explain it behind the woodshed here on this. Just know this is what the lawyers and the corporations are doing. And it's faulty, and they did this thing. The way this goes through the process, they took the process they use, and they allowed themselves to fix what was supposed to be reviewed for correctness after the negotiations. In other words, somebody had to think ahead of time that they were going to do this. That when they go through and do the scrubbing work to fix this up, make sure it's more consistent with the law as it's supposed to be, they took the ability they took that opportunity when it's underneath no scrutiny in order to make this change, which expands the corporation's ability to come after you. And that means us, no matter what. It's about music, it could be any copyright, it could be the websites and everything else. So this is the sneaky, underhanded stuff that goes on. You can be silent about it, or you can make this thing the wrong you want to make right, and start talking to people, important people, the ones that would be making these decisions despite us. Maybe you can persuade them to not. It's certainly not going to happen if you don't. There's a whole world that's been developed around us, and we can continue to excuse it, or we can roll up our sleeves and take our part in it. The sneakiness that goes on now, it passes as okay. It can't be okay, folks. I can't believe it's okay. I can't believe you think it's okay, and I can't believe that you can continue to not really be responsive to it. We're talking earlier about the hackers on the Linux Mint version here that's been apparently fixed, but then nonetheless, if you downloaded it here in the last few days and don't get it from anybody else now you better go to the original website and do the hashtag check to make sure it's the proper one. But this is all because of there's adulterations going on, and corporations are doing it, and the government being one of the biggest corporations, depending on what context you're talking about it. But there was like a promotion that went on, I've been saying be careful your upgrades for Windows 7 because they're going to try and give you a Windows 10 and they're becoming aggressive. Well, now we come and we see the hand-in-hand agreement with the government over the Department of Defense upgrading 4 million devices to use Windows 10. Now, what I found astonishing is that they said the DoD ran this through a certification process, a governmental certification process, and it passed muster. It passed the National Information Assurance Program and the Defense Information Systems Agency Unified Capabilities Approved Products List. It passed those, folks. This is the Department of Defense. And we already know, they've already admitted, the Windows 10 sitting back there with all their back doors looking at your stuff. Now, how did the DoD actually allow this to go through unless they agree to it? And if they agree to it, then you realize we've got quite a few problems. One, at least, is that they don't really believe in the war on terror. Not the cyber war. Not the one that they're talking to you about. It's the one that they continue to create and allow to continue. If you think that Windows 10 is secure sufficiently that the DoD is going to accept it, well, I don't know what you got in your pipe. And this is just a promotion piece. Because even if it may be coming that this next thing this story that pops up, if everyone's going to go to accept that the Department of Defense is believing that Windows 10 is secure, then this next story where the FBI wins lawsuit over forcing Apple to install spyware on IP phones is really kind of a ridiculous story. And there is a ridiculousness behind this so-called FBI win over Apple. It's not unknown, not sure. It looks like that Apple's been playing games to give themselves some more market advantage as the defender of security, when in fact they've been playing the game all this time. That if they're going to allow the DoD is going to allow Windows to be their secure platform, Apple means nothing. It's all done, folks. And so again, we're back to the silent weapons, quiet wars. You choose to use this technology, understand the consequences of it. If you're going to be becoming more and more susceptible to this, you become more and more susceptible to the failures that happen. Like when Russia bank licenses were revoked for using hackers to withdraw funds. The banks themselves were hacked in Russia, or from Russia, or somewhere around Russia, were using hackers to take money out of your account if you had a bank account there. Warning, Will Robinson, this could happen to you anywhere then. Well, they got caught. What about the ones that are not getting caught? And they get losses they blame on hackers, and it's actually the banks doing it. Russian banks have had licenses revoked after being suspected of direct participation in using hackers or blaming cyber attacks to withdraw funds illegally. Like, that's almost a redundant statement. Withdraw funds illegally on that, isn't it? The Russian central bank suspects that certain national banks have been using hackers to withdraw funds from the accounts of their clients, according to results in a recent investigation conducted by experts at the central bank. This brings up another idea. You have these offers of inspector general. You see a wrong going on in an agency that's fraud and waste and mismanagement, make a report. How did this investigation start? Someone had to make a complaint. So there it is. You go ahead and put your money in the bank. Go cashless, folks. To me, it's just evidence of how things are going in the world. If you continue to accept it, this is where our future is. What's that little video? It's gone. Put money in the account. You don't even get done with the transaction. It's gone. And it's the bank doing it. If you didn't understand your fractional reserve and now your derivative system isn't the same thing, if that's not so obvious. So what's to stop all this? But local control, being active against it, and where this one constitutional sheriff in Glenn Palmer is being attacked by the association he belongs to. I mean, that alone, I would quit that association so fast it wouldn't even make your head spin. But maybe not. But I would get out of that. I would just call them the criminals that they are. Expose that whole point. Why be part of a group of people like that? But here's another sheriff that decides to step up on some decent stories that we've heard where the sheriff can block these things, block your federal impositions. They can block all this going on by making a statement. Sheriff Gilbertson did in Josephine County. He said, I don't want the feds here. Glenn Palmer's done the same thing. I don't want the feds here. And then he tried to work, couldn't work with them. They won't work with you. A showdown. Sheriff blocks FDA inspectors from raw milk farm. So what does that mean? I'm just going from the title. You can get all the links, folks. There's information here for you to see how it gets done. This is another way to get local control to step up. You need to go dialogue. I don't know if I can use that word, not dialogue. You need to go talk with your local law enforcement and see where they are. See if they know that the problem is here and see that they know that the power. Forget the constitutional sheriff. It's doing the law. It's keeping the peace. They're a constitutional sheriff. If they don't agree that they got an extension, you're not going to convince them because you can berate them about being a constitutional sheriff or not. They're all constitutional sheriffs if they're in the office. That's what the office is about. So what you do is you present the law that they're supposed to be keeping the peace with. And the law shows that they have the right to block these invasions. And you'll understand if you read the report how that happened and why the sheriff decided that. You can even contact the sheriff. Thank you very much for doing that for a producer. What were your parameters on that I can talk to my sheriff? This is things you can do. Stepping up. The war is everywhere, so I don't know what more to say. You can't just. Yes, it's easy not to say anything. That's what they prey on that, and I'm not talking a religion here, although it is. The sheriff can become a big power. That's why they're after Glenn Palmer. Why Sheriff Gilbertson was kicked out of office, other than the cronyism, I don't understand, because he was actually, like I told you, when he stepped up and said the feds have to move out, peace came over the land, the public land, and miners went back to work. They all wondered where all the miners went. The miners went back to work. They weren't being hounded and harassed. And in turn, the county wasn't hounded and harassed. With the miners come in and say, "Hey, what's going on here? Why aren't you enforcing the law?" It was really that simple. So we can keep the battle going, or we can stop it. We can start to we can saber rattle, or we can go talk with people that may have the power within the system to help us. One quick thing I want to touch on here is going back. Let's go international over here. Russia and Turkey exchange threats and war tensions reverberate along the Syrian border. This is really something that's starting to build up. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but then it was the United States and NATO was being a little bit questioning. They've still got a little question, but what I was happy to hear about the saber rattling that goes on and trying to keep the tensions down was NATO warns Turkey that it can't count on support in a conflict with Russia as tensions escalate if Turkey starts it. What we see over there that could be building of a pretty nasty war, they're now, there's a little bit of cooler minds that if they're not absolutely saying that that's not going to happen, they're at least in a position that the warning's now going out to Turkey to stop being crazy. We're not going to support you if you start it. That's what Turkey is calling on, is I think that Article 5, but that's not going to be an attack on Turkey where Turkey attacks. So NATO and the United States came out and said, no, you can't do it that way. And so I felt a little better for everybody over there about that, and I don't know what more to say than to tell you that it's really tenuous, and it's going to have a lot of reflection on the world here, what's going to happen. And remember, we're coming up to April, and the timbers seem to be shaking here, so I'm not quite sure whether that's going to happen or not about the economics about all this. And if that happens, they're going to need a war just to get us focus us on the wrong stuff as well. That's how it's working. Thank you for tuning in today. Appreciate the donations you've been making, and if you can spare some more, send it on over to reallibertymedia.com and the donation, all the donation buttons and PayPal to support the servers, and maybe put a little bank account going and for the server extensions, and maybe paying the electricity and all the time that Grimmer's been putting in. And then worldtruth.org, we got the Spreaker accounts, the Spreaker account that goes on, and Grammy Mary's contribution to that and to the servers at reallibertymedia.com. And thanks to you, Jules, over there at UCY and the broadcasters. Appreciate all your help, and send the podcast out, folks. Tell people. Take care. Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.